is the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS show with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook live show. We have 4 games on a Thursday main slate here over on DraftKings and FanDuel, and it is shaping up to be a very, very interesting day when it comes to the injury news. James, you did the 4-game playbook. That is live over on Fantasy Alarm already, but if you go check out that playbook at the top, you'll see the injury section. You'll see a lot of names with some questionable tags that we may or may not know ahead of roster lock because it is a Thursday slate, which means it is a primetime slate, which means we get primetime spacing of these games. There's an hour in between each game kicking off. We'll know the starting lineups for Toronto, Philadelphia before roster lock, but there is a good chance we will not know the status of the players in New Orleans ahead of their game for roster lock, Utah, San Antonio. So on a slate like today, though it is just 4 games, make sure you have notifications turned on, be available with your phones, mobile devices, computers to make some late lineup changes if you have to, because there are people in the contest that you're in that will be doing those things. And if you do not make the pivots that those players make, you'll find yourself likely behind the 8 ball in some of those scenarios here today. So given all the news we're waiting on today, make sure you are ready and active. Don't set and forget in the NBA. That is a quick way to find yourselves below the cash line.
I don't know if I've ever set and forget and ever cashed in NBA. I think that's maybe the best advice you could give a novice player is like, you literally, that's the last thing you can do in NBA. You cannot just like be like, all right, this is it. I'm good. I'm going to go eat dinner. Like MLB, like you could set your lineup at 4 p.m. Yeah. So
outside of a rare pitcher scratch, which I feel like we got more of this year than we have in years past, you're pretty good. The NFL, you pretty much know who's in or out because inactives come out at 11:30. The NBA, they're supposed to tell you 30 minutes ahead of time. Alec Burks got ruled out last night after roster lock.
After
I had him in my FanDuel lineup, James. I missed cashing by 8 fantasy points yesterday on FanDuel with a 0 from Alec Burks. And with exposure to Memphis, Utah, and again, they got a 30-point blowout. I was well on my way with that lineup to having a pretty good cashing night on FanDuel. Ultimately fell short of the cash line because of it, but just that's a kick. Missing by 8 points, having to eat a 0 because the guy after lock he gets ruled out is a tough pill to swallow. But we appreciate you all tuning in. I see Rex already in the chat. I see 3 of you in the chat here. If you're in our Discord, we'll get that link out to you. I'm sure it's posted already. If not, we'll be momentarily. And we'll be here to break down just the 4-gamer. We got Toronto, Philly. We got Detroit, New Orleans. Got Orlando, Utah. We got San Antonio, Phoenix to close out the slate here today. Some good matchups, some notable players that we're really high on here today, and some pretty interesting rostership projections. If you go over and look at our rostership tool over at Fantasy Alarm, you'll see what we're talking about here, where people are leaning with their lineups this evening. There's a very mispriced player on this 4-game slate. We talk about this a lot for those of you who are maybe new to NBA DFS or just tuning into the show. When there are smaller slates, DraftKings algo sometimes give you some small slate pricing on some of these guys. You'll get them cheaper today than you will on a 13-game slate. It feels that way. It could be that way for a couple of the guys that we're going to talk about here this evening. And before we do jump into it again, we appreciate everybody who is tuning into today's show. If you haven't already liked the today's show, subscribe to today's show, shared today's show, do so, please. Certainly helps us out. Get some more visibility. We can start doing a lot more cool things here when it comes to the shows we do here at Fantasy Alarm. James, let's talk about some spreads and totals here. What do you say?
Yeah, nothing too exciting. San Antonio, Phoenix, and I'll give it a little fresh here. Yeah, there's been some movement there on the over 227 now. That game opened at 225.5. It's 8.5 now. Is the spread. Orlando, Utah has been hovering around 221 pretty much all day. It's 220, anywhere from 220.5 to 222. in the sports books. And, since it opened a Utah 1-point favorite, John. We have now shifted. Orlando is actually favored on every sports book, either 1 to 2 points. I think that's a little interesting. The only
some news is coming out that we don't know yet.
Yeah, there's only been one piece of news in that game so far, at least from the Utah side. It's Walker Kessler, and they listed him probable. So, it's not even like he was listed out or doubtful.
It is a back-to-back with Utah. So
it is.
Who knows, right?
It is a back-to-back, but home games for both, and they didn't play the fourth quarter. Right? Like the starters didn't. Well, some. They put
John Collins in the fourth. They brought John Collins in the fourth. And then Sexton closed the game. So I don't know.
Yes. So key rotation pieces did, I guess, play technically in the fourth, but there were Kessler played 18 minutes. THT played 23 minutes. So interesting to see the lines so heavily in favor, or the bettors favoring Orlando here. Detroit, New Orleans opened as 7.5-point favorites. Then we got word Zion Williamson sitting on the second leg of a back-to-back. New Orleans still favored. Here, 5 points now. It opened at 7.5, as I mentioned, 4.5 on BetMGM, but really just an abysmal 215.5 game total in that one. And that's the same total it is in Toronto and Philly, which opened at 218. Philly has pretty consistently been 8-point favorites all day. That's where we remain. So those are your 4 totals. Again, 2 of them over 220, 2 of them in the grotesque range, John, of 215, but it's 4 games. We don't have the luxury of 13 game slate. Well, I'm just going to cross Knicks Cavs off.
No Sacramento Golden State on this slate where it's a 243. We got to do what we got to do, deal with what we have to deal with. Let's jump into tonight's positional breakdowns here. Devin Booker is your top priced point guard on this slate. We know no Bradley Beal. He is questionable still to play. There was a no timetable update, and then following that was questionable. So we'll see whether or not he plays. He's missed all but one game this season. In that one game he played, he balled up 32-6-8 against Golden State. So we'll see if he's good enough to go. If he is, he gets San Antonio in a spot where I don't think many people, or at least from what I saw on rostership, nobody's really playing the late game here. Which if you want to do a little contrarianness, the late night hammer here against San Antonio Phoenix, maybe a way to go. Guards we are looking at tonight in our player pool. Initially, we were all in on Tyrese Maxey, still very much like Tyrese Maxey, but the news that broke today with no Zion Williamson, potentially no Brandon Ingram, brings us CJ McCollum here coming off of a 55 fantasy point effort, $7,200 here for the Pelicans. Are you in or out on McCollum here as a core play today?
Cover of today's playbook, cover of today's show. Hopefully that cancels out the curse. Double it downing, like the double down now cancels out any curse potential for cover boy curse. So yeah, I'm all in on McCollum. If one of them are out, I think the rest of the team just naturally looks good. It's just hard to get to these guys at their prices when everyone's in. The minutes are great for CJ McCollum. 37 minutes last night in a competitive game. We've now seen that twice. He's played 30 minutes in 2 blowouts, too. Or not blowouts, but one was a blowout. He played 33 minutes in 28-point loss. And then he played 30 minutes in the next game. There's nothing really not to like. He's been rebounding really well. He has 5+ assists in all 4 games. And oh, by the way, this guy is a career 20-point scorer who was even asked to do more without Brandon Ingram. If he's without Ingram and Zion, I'm not going to sit here and say I would bet a CJ McCollum triple-double, but I think that would be on the table. I think he'd be asked to do everything for this team. And we've seen Detroit struggle. I mean, they got torched by they got torched in the second half by Portland last night. Portland, the team that's probably going to lose more games than maybe every other team other than Washington. They're going to both be tanking for not Wemby this year because they missed out on that. But I think McCollum is clear-cut the top dog per dollar, probably first or the second best per dollar play of the slate, because there is, you alluded to earlier, someone who's too cheap at the shooting guard spot. But I love McCollum. I don't care if he's chalky or not. I'm plugging and playing.
If you fit him in, can you play both Maxey and McCollum, or do you have to find yourself today leaning one way or the other?
So, I mean, I definitely think it's interesting that Maxi's not getting any ownership, right? Because he's not really owned last time I checked. And there's a guy who, yeah, obviously it's not the same value or upside that we're seeing, but like we're talking about a guy who's playing big minutes. If this game's competitive, he's playing 40 minutes. We're talking about a guy who is an elite 3-point shooter. He's shooting 55%, shot 43% from 30 last year, 50, 55, 90 splits this year from the field. And oh, by the way, coming off 10 rebounds, which in a game where JoJo also had a double-double, maybe this is like signs to like, hey, he learned under James Harden, you know what I mean? And now we're seeing James Harden like numbers, right? So I don't think
played
that's
against Toronto already. He had 41 minutes in that game in Toronto, 34, 6, and 7.
Yep.
I think what happened here was going into today, last night as well, we were all about Tyrese Maxey. The Zion Williamson news breaks, the Brandon Ingram injury status changes, and now all of a sudden all that roster shit that maybe was trending more towards Tyrese Maxey just flooded down to CJ McCollum. So now you have McCollum as one of the higher projected roster players here on today's slate, while Maxey getting less love makes him a good tournament pivot. Or if you can't afford to fit both here today, you probably figure out a way to play both. There's a couple of top spends. We'll see if you go fair and balance or a bit more stars and scrubs here. Other point guards, as we work our way down, again, only 4 games, so the depth here does shorten up quick. Dennis Schroeder in that game against Philadelphia had a double-double, 15, 4, and 10, and that one for 42 fantasy points. He's coming off another double-double. He has 3 double-doubles in 5 games, does Dennis Schroeder. The other 2 games where he doesn't, he had 8 and 7 assists. This is some of the best overall play we've seen from Dennis Schroeder in a while. Kudos to you. You were talking DS up coming into the season, loving sort of the new coach connection they have in Toronto, plays that Euro style of basketball where Schroeder was the MVP, you were saying, or one of the best players.
He won the Euro League. He won the Euro. He won the tournament. Literally the World FIBA tournament MVP.
World FIBA MVP. So, and he's definitely playing that way. Season high 24 points last night against Milwaukee in a blowout win. No problems going back to Dennis Schroeder tonight at $6,200.
Nope. And another guy who is kind of floating around that Maxey ownership too. I think a lot of the ownership is going to float to like 3 players at this position. One, we've already talked about McCollum, obviously. 2, we're about to talk about mostly because price point, but 6,200 is a very comfortable price to get to Schroeder. He has multi-position eligibility too, which, someone like McCollum, someone like Markelle Fultz, and Talon Horton-Tucker, the 2 second and third highest rostered projected players, don't have. So there's a lot to like about Schroeder. You just hope this game stays competitive, right? Like that's the ultimate factor. I added something today. Because I think we're starting to get a better indication on who's playing fast and who's playing slow. Raptors dead last in pace, John. So naturally, what does that mean? Every game is a pace up spot for Toronto. Philly not incredibly fast. They play at the 20th fastest pace, but still a pace increase nonetheless. 10 positions and a couple possessions slower. So more possessions for Dennis Schroeder equals more fantasy point opportunities.
I like it. How do you rank the 3 Orlando Magic guards here we have? Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs.
So if you want to talk it like based on ownership, Fultz is getting a lot of it and most of it. And I think that's kind of a miss. Not that I don't think Markelle Fultz doesn't have a ceiling because he just showed it a couple of games ago, especially when, he's scoring well and kind of contributing everywhere, 36. I think Jalen Suggs is probably the best of the 3. He seems to be playing the best out of all 3 of them. He seems to be the least impacted so far in terms of
the most consistent through 4 games for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm Houston game aside, because that was a blowout. Like he hasn't been taken off the floor really. Like Fultz has had his games where he's been taken off. Anthony hasn't really played the last 2 games. Suggs does the most of them all. So where like Anthony could get hot and score you 20 points more often than Suggs can, and Fultz can probably get you a double-double more often than Suggs can. Suggs is way more consistent just everywhere. And you alluded to how good he's been on the glass. 4+ rebounds in all four games. The assists have been there. The points double-digit in 3 straight.
Look at the steals. I mean, obviously outlier game against Portland, 6 total blocks and steals in that game. But value block against the Clippers, has a steal in 2 of the other games there since then. So giving you a little defense, giving you some boards, a couple of assists. And I mean, listen, he's not shooting the ball well from 3. But he is shooting threes, right? 2 games with 7 3-point attempts, a game with 5, couple more of those drop. And now you're talking about a guy that could be scoring 15 to 18 points a game here. So I do like Jalen Suggs as well in this spot against Utah, just because he's a little bit cheaper than he is on Fultz. And as you mentioned, the rostership more on Fultz here. If we're talking injury news, we got to look at Sasser here, waiting on the Alec Burks news after last night. It seems like he's still considered questionable. Now, Sasser super efficient in 23 minutes here. Yep. He and Joe Harris both got seemingly the Alec Burks role. Sasser played a little bit more of the minutes that we usually see out of Burks at 23, 25 minutes. He was 4 of 6, but 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 block, and 4 steals feels maybe a little bit unrepeatable. But on a slate where there's not a lot of value, our guy IC3 is asking, is Gary Harris and Watanabe are under 4K plays or are cheap plays today? Sasser's going to be in that conversation today as well if Alec Burks gets ruled out again.
Yeah, and I said it to you last night. He closed last night's game with Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, Ausar Thompson, and Joe Harris. That was their closing lineup. And he played almost nearly the final 5 minutes. It's obviously contingent on Alec Burks being on the floor or being off the floor rather, but
first round pick this year. So it's not like he's a journeyman or a walk-on or a late second or whatever. Guy was a first round pick this season. So there is some potential with him.
And I think it's worth mentioning, John, he played the guy he played over. He played over Killian Hayes, who continues to be terrible. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful to Killian Hayes.
They would play more Jaden Ivey.
Well, we know that's just not going to happen. So, at this rate, Killian Hayes.
The fact that Sasser played more than Ivy, I think, is telling, So.
Yes, it is. And Killian Hayes went 0 for 6 again yesterday. He's shooting 27%. If that's the player he's going to be, because he's been that player every year, he is going to lose time to players like Marcus Sasser.
Jackson Steele's numbers are elite, but he's such a 0 on the offensive side of the ball,
0. He has the occasional good assist game, but if he can't – but, you think about Detroit, right? Think about their starting lineup. Cade can shoot, but he's not 44% is not going to, that's not sustainable for what we've seen from Cade Cunningham from 3. They need floor spacing. And if Marcus Sasser is going to provide that for them without Alec Burks, which is why we saw Alec Burks playing 25 plus minutes a night before his little random injury that popped up last night, they're going to play Sasser probably over Killian Hayes. At least Hayes starts, Sasser comes in. And so what IC3 has said is interesting because that's just goes to show you that there is really bad value tonight.
There's not a lot of great value tonight.
But there's also a lot of potential value, like the Brandon Ingram news, the Devin Booker news, Jalen Duren and Alec Burks both provide pivots for value. So
I always don't want to play a lot of Toronto Philly because I want to be available in case Booker gets ruled out and do the Gordon Allen pivots that we did on the 2 nights ago when they smashed. But the way they stagger these things, if you wait too long and these games go off, then you're dead. You're running out of players to play. So tough the way they spread these games out, but the value certainly is a bit limited here. Any other point guards before we move on over?
I'll say this because he's only point guard on FanDuel. Dyson Daniels, who I've been touting for a couple slates now. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him approach 30 minutes if Brandon Ingram sat. Just because I think he's Hawkins realistically from a fantasy perspective played well. And I know he was a first round pick and whatnot, but he was 4 of 19 from the floor, right? Not to say Dyson Daniels 3 for 10 was much better, but Dyson Daniels had really good preseason. He was also a former first-round pick. So I wouldn't who's tonight's Pritchard? No one's scoring 150 points tonight. So, that's one thing. So I'm not sure there's going to be a team winning by 50 either, and up 50 by the end of
Did
the
you
third
see the
quarter.
guy that hit 50 grand betting the Peyton Pritchard's props?
Probably Mark. It's probably Mark.
I wish it was Mark.
Sorry, it was probably Mark. So I don't mind Dyson Daniels. He's the clear pivot off of a super chalk Jordan Hawkins. You can play him at point guard or shooting guard.
Sure. Move on over to shooting guard position here again. We've talked Booker. Now you mentioned Cade it's not sustainable for him to shoot 44% from three, and I largely agree with you. But I think that it's in his tool bag to improve as a 3-point shooter.
Sure.
So this could just be his. It's his third year, but his second full year, maybe we hope.
Not even second full. Like he didn't even remember because he missed like the first half
missed the end of his
year.
rookie year, right? So. Listen, I love Cade Cunningham. I loved him when he was drafted. We were big fans of him. I think we had him on the cover of our draft guide last year. Like we were all in. Cade Cunningham gets hurt. I joked yesterday. We had the every other good game, bad game here. Now it's a back-to-back coming off of a good game. Are you worried that he's not capable of performing? Because the only other back-to-back he had poorly, then did great. Do we get the reverse of that here?
I think Cade, for me, just like permanently, is the 1% tournament play that I'm okay getting to if that's where
making 3 lineups, he finds his way into 1.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he has a 50-point ceiling, probably higher when the shot is falling the way it has. Mm-hmm. He just turns the ball over a lot, and there's foul trouble potential.
In 2 games of 27 shot attempts.
Yep.
That is insane.
Yeah, he has a really high ceiling as a scorer. He has a really high ceiling because he does a lot of good things. He just can get turnover happy and he can get foul happy. And that obviously, those two things can spiral at the same time as a young player. So Cade in tournaments, perfectly fine.
Yeah. What I love about Cade Cunningham too is his size. I mean,
huge point guard.
Would love to see him get to the rim a little bit more, some more free throws maybe, and really help out like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? Just like gets to the rim, gets the free throws, scores the buckets. Would like to see Cade do a little bit more to that. Ingram, if he's in, are you in or out? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sure. Great eligibility, no Zion, sure, perfectly fine.
Devin Vassell, someone that I think is maybe a little bit priced to ceiling, but on this slate, what are your thoughts?
I think that I'll say this blanket statement about the Spurs. I'm okay getting to them because none of them are highly rostered. And when we were talking about Vegas, let's not forget what the best game environment on the board is, right? The teams that are playing at the fastest pace, the highest total. It's Spurs, Phoenix. We just saw this game go for 227 points the other day. And yeah, it was kind of an anomaly the way that San Antonio came back, but Vassell was at the forefront of that. He isn't my top Spur. I actually wrote up one of the Spurs in the playbook today, not named Devin Vassell, not named Victor Wembanyama. So I like Vassell, but I'm also perfectly fine with your assessment too. Like probably a little too expensive, but if you end up getting Devin Vassell, I think there's 40 plus in his bag.
Sure. Mid-tier guys we've discussed Schroeder already, OG, Eric Gordon, DeAnthony Melton, all fine here, but our chalk play of the day so far, in terms of our rostership, is the one Jordan Clarkson. He is $5,400 on DraftKings, coming off of a 39 fantasy point game. He had 38 and 29 to open the season. And then against Phoenix and Denver, didn't play so hot. Going up against Orlando, they got a lot of guards they can throw at him here. Just from a pure rostership point, do you have to just play Jordan Clarkson tonight?
I mean, if you're playing cash, him and CJ McCollum should probably be the first 2 players in, and then you figure it out from there. Like you move on, and that's what we do. But like the price is silly. I mean, he played poorly in Phoenix. Their whole team, they got torched on the second leg of a back-to-back, and then they had to travel to Denver the next game. Like those are really 2 tough games after playing against the Clippers, who finished as the 3 seed last year, and the Clippers, who, many people really like this year, myself and yourself included. So they haven't really had a favorable schedule. And because of 2 bad games where we go 5,600, he goes for 40 last night. And then they're like, you know what we can do?
He goes for 40 in 26 minutes too, by the way.
Yeah. And then they say, you know what we can do? Let's make it easier for people to play Jordan Clarkson, and let's make it even cheaper. So it does feel like just one of those things where the legs should be fine after just playing 26 minutes, as you mentioned, caused the blowout, didn't have to play in the fourth quarter.
I like the assists too. Jordan
Love the
Clarkson
assist.
never really one to like profile as a high assist guy, but 6-6 obviously had 2 and 22 minutes here, 6 and 5 in just 26 minutes against Memphis. So now Memphis, Utah last night almost had more 3-pointers made than Memphis had buckets for a lot of that game. I don't know if they go out and shoot 75% from three from the floor right away again. So maybe have a little bit of a expectation that Utah's offense steps back slightly here, but Clarkson's always been a volume shooter, always been a guy that takes some threes here. So yes, at $5,400, he's going to be a core play for many, many lineups. Those of you who are tuning in here, we appreciate all of you. If you could hit that like and subscribe button to the channel, would do us wonders, getting us more visibility, help us grow the channel. We could do a lot more cool stuff for everybody as we grow our NBA DFS product here over at Fantasy Alarm. Definitely appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We are answering your questions. I see through you. Mark was in there. Rex was in there earlier as well. So feel free to throw your questions in chat. To Prince, here we go. Who are we in on tonight? I know you're over on FanDuel. You got whipped. Listen, I think we had some good lineups. I got unfortunately burned by the blowout in the Memphis-Utah game, and then the Alec Burks 0 did me no favors. But like I was saying to kick off the show, 8 points off the cash line I was on FanDuel with the 0 from Alec Burks, with Utah-Memphis blowing out. So I feel like we were in the right direction. But we'll get some FanDuel plays for you here to Prince. Let us know what kind of your lineup builds are at, and we can help you out. But so far, we're definitely in on CJ McCollum tonight with the Zion Williamson news. We like Tyrese Maxey. We like Jordan Clarkson on DraftKings at his $5,400 price tag. So definitely some good guard play here. Do you go back to Jordan Hawkins if everything kind of stays the same with New Orleans? Ingram's out, Zion's out. 4 of 19 shooting, 2 of 13 from 3. So not great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have interest in Hawkins. I'm definitely interested as to why he's not projected any ownership. I know Brandon Ingram is getting all of it and CJ McCollum's getting all of it, but
once Ingram gets ruled out, obviously that will just disperse where that goes.
If I guess technically is the proper way to if I know like knee tendonitis doesn't sound great and I think he doesn't play, but if he gets ruled out, but it's just interesting to see that kind of is the field saying they don't think Jordan Hawkins is going to start if Ingram plays, which I'm not sure he wouldn't, because they are missing their starting power forward. They could just go Herb Jones at the starting power forward, and something they did all last year. Yeah. So if Ingram doesn't play, interested in Hawkins. If Burks does play, interested in Burks in tournaments. I think, again, with Killian Hayes struggling so bad, we're going to continue to see an expanded role for Alec Burks. He's played 25 minutes in 3 of the 4 games, and the one game he didn't, still went 3 or 4 from 3 and had 11 and 7, which has been, something that we were talking about. Like, Alex Burks has been really scoring dependent, and then he went and did the 7 assists. So I like both those guys. I mentioned the Dyson Daniels thing. You can play him too if there's no Brendan Ingram. I see
boring, but the minutes have kind of been there. Consistent 17 to 24 games, obviously. Not a high volume shooter, but hitting his shots, couple of assists, couple of rebounds. It is a 4-game slate. So, a guy giving you 17 fantasy points might end up still in the optimal, if all things go right here.
Yeah, you just have to understand he has a 5-point ceiling or floor, as he showed us that. So, I mean, even in 19 minutes, if he's not making shots, he's toast, because he's not like a great peripheral stuffer. So it's a great matchup, and that was what brought us to Memphis last night, where Utah was the worst defensive rated team in basketball. They've gotten a little better. They're 27th heading into the game on a back-to-back. So like, I can understand wanting to get some magic. I don't know personally if I'm going to be getting to Harris, but I can understand the appeal.
Okay. Let's move on over to small forward. And we got a question from Beantown here. With the expectation that Covington and KJ Martin and crew are available tonight, how does that impact some of the new players, current players? Kelly Oubre is being moved into the starting lineup. We got that word here. Tobias Harris, obviously longtime Sixer, Does Covington and Martin make any worry for you when it comes to this lineup?
I just don't know what to expect because they also still have Daniel House they can play. I know Danny Green's not there. I know Batum's not there. Rob Covington's there. There's like 4 different forwards that they could technically rotate in.
Marcus Morris can play.
Yeah, there's no like definitive answer on what direction Nick Nurse is going to go. Now, if we get word like, hey, KJ Martin is going to be the first guy off the bench tonight, then yeah, I'd have interest in KJ Martin. We saw Oubre playing 30 minutes off the bench for them, right? So
Yep.
There's obviously one of these guys going to be in play. My guess is Covington gets the first crack at a rotation
Because he's
spot
been playing the most as it is so far.
because he's been playing the most. But that's like based on just that, that he is a 3-and-D guy, similar to what PJ Tucker left behind. Probably a little better offensively than PJ Tucker, a little taller than PJ Tucker as well. So that would be my guess. I would say Covington would get the first crack at off the bench, but like KJ Martin's young, super athletic, and maybe what Nick Nurse is looking for off the bench, like similar to Kelly Oubre, but not as good from 3.
Right.
So it's really hard to pinpoint what they're going to do. What I will tell you, and what John and I have told you all season, the starters are playing 35 minutes guaranteed. I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Beverley got 30 minutes off the bench tonight because he's already been in the rotation. We saw a season high 20 minutes last time from Portland. Maybe something Nick Nurse is more comfortable with, but really hard without any clarification from Nurse on who is going to be like get the first crack at things to like say, I think it's going to be player X.
Yeah. I'm with you. Hard to know, but at least the starting lineup is going to be there for us. Last night, Lauri Markkanen was one of our favorite players. He was on pace to go absolutely nutty. Unfortunately, that blowout happened, and he finished with 39 fantasy points in just 28 minutes. Still gave you the double-double in all but one game now this season, running up against Utah. Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, in that front court there. Kind of tough matchup for him. For a little bit cheaper, has been the darling of our DFS season so far in Scotty Barnes. They bumped him up a couple of $100 here, but tough matchup we thought against Milwaukee. No problem at all. Faced Philadelphia already this season. 46 fantasy points in that game. Chicago went for 55. Minnesota with some bigs went for 47. Seemingly matchup-proof Scotty Barnes here for cheaper than Lauri Markkanen. Are you playing them both? How do you pick one or the other?
Lauri is fine. It's a terrible paced spot for Utah. They're going way down in pace. And the better value is definitely like the Clarkson Collins range. If you want to play Lauri in tournaments, fine. Scotty Barnes continues to be awesome. I mean, double or triple double in 3 of the 5 games, 44 plus fantasy points in all 5 games. Even in a game where he plays 29 minutes, 51 fantasy points, and they torch Milwaukee. I have no issues getting to Scotty Barnes. I think, the eligibility is better than Markkanen. Everything just leads me like instead of playing Markkanen, I'd rather just play Scotty Barnes in the slate. Let's not forget Markkanen was $8,400 yesterday, and now we're talking about a guy who's $600 more for. Yep. I mean, I get it. There's a near 60-point ceiling, but we've also gotten 50 plus out of Barnes twice this year. One of them came in 29 minutes, so I definitely lean Barnes of the 2.
4 games, playing cash, playing Franz Wagner, right?
Yeah, Franz Wagner, pace-up spot, hasn't necessarily shot the ball well, and he's still giving you workman-like performances, 30 to 37.
30, I mean, just plugging in every day,
Yep, and this is one of those spots where you could have a ceiling. There is definitely shot-making ability in this guy. 2 for 7, 2 for 7, 3 for 9, 3 for 7 from 3. So the 3-point attempts are there. If a couple more fall, we're talking about a guy probably averaging like 21, 22 points per game too. So
36% from 3 last year. He's shooting just 33% this year, but he has doubled his 3-point attempts. So gotta love that, I guess. Shooting more from 3 means more potential points for him. Always a good rebounder. Give you a couple of assists. I like his PRAs usually most nights. This could be, like you said, a pace-up spot. Maybe the PRA for Franz Wagner finds himself in play for those doing some prop betting. here this evening, but always a great cash game play. Osor Thompson was one of our favorite plays last night. Again, nobody on Detroit really did anything in the second half of that game, unfortunately. Still came through at 16-7, 2-2. We know the defense is going to be there. He's going to crash the boards. Not going to have to deal with Zion Williamson tonight. Thoughts on Osor with a little price bump now, though, $6,600.
Yeah, I don't love the price, but I am okay if that's where you end up. Like, this game is not the best on the board, a very hyped up price. I would definitely want Jalen Duren to be out at 6,600,
sure.
which we don't have official word on yet. He's still listed questionable, but I think for me personally to get to Thompson, I would at 66, I would need Jalen Duren to be out.
Okay. Other guys in the 6K range, we have Keldon, $6,500. We have Kelly Oubre down at 58. Jeremy Sohan's 56, Gordon, Gary Trent, Herb Jones, as you mentioned, might see in the starting lineup here. Grayson Allen at 51. Obviously the Gordon Allen news really is going to be dependent on Devin Booker's availability. How do you find yourself attacking this mid-tier of small forward position?
So I mentioned the spur that I wrote up, and it's Keldon Johnson. And I have not been too fond of Keldon Johnson because he just has been so scoring dependent in years past, but the peripheral stats look pretty good. 3+ rebounds in all 4. He has 4+ assists in 3 of the 4, at least 1 block and steal in 3 straight games. And it has come with pretty good scoring. Look, that Clippers game, I'm ready to just wipe from planet Earth, right? That was everyone in that game on the Spurs were trash. 1 for 9 from the floor. We just saw this matchup. I do think Phoenix, if there's one thing that you have to worry about, it's that perimeter defense. I mean, Eric Gordon, Grayson Allen, Durant can be annoying defensively, but
he's just on Wembanyama.
Yeah, but it's the Wemby matchup. So I like Keldon quite a bit here. When you look at some of the numbers for the Spurs this year, Wemby has by far been the best fantasy per minute producer. 1.23 fantasy points per minute for Wembanyama. Keldon Johnson's second, 1.4 or 1.04 fantasy points per minute. He's second in usage rate, 23%. So I like this. And again, no one's playing the Spurs. This is the best game on the board. And we saw that the other night. Spurs popped up in winning lineups everywhere in this same game. And it's the late night hammer. There's clearly you're playing Spurs. You get word that Devin Booker's out. It gives you a lot of flexibility to pivot. I think there's a lot of things to like about using Spurs and using the late game in general. If you are someone who's going to not have kids and stay up until 10 p.m. and be able to pivot, right. But I think Keldon Johnson as a standalone makes a lot of sense at 6,500. I wish he had, power forward eligibility too, but he doesn't. But 6,500 is a good price for him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Anybody else down here for small forward? Any values for you on tonight's slate?
I guess
Chetty?
TBD. Yeah, you could play Chetty. It's obviously another low floor play, but he's been pretty consistent with the fantasy points and minutes. 17 minutes plus 15 plus fantasy points. We know he can space the floor really well, which keeps him in games. So I'm okay with it. I'm a little indifferent, but if that's where you land in your tournaments, would not play him in cash. I know Rex is talking about cash games. Would not play Chetty in cash, but he's a fine tournament play.
Sure. Power forward here, we got KD at 10.8, second highest priced player overall on the slate. Nobody is playing Kevin Durant, at least for now, on our sheet there. I'm not really into Pascal Siakam. I did pivot to Wembanyama the other day. Came through at $7,900.
Yeah, look, Wemby's definitely interesting. Obviously, I think night to night. God bless you, by the way. Night to night, definitely going to be interesting. We saw the upside. We've seen the fantasy point per minute machine that he is. We just need the Houston minutes. We just need the 31 minutes. The 26 to 28 minutes is kind of tough to go back to the well every slate with, but we know he can get you 13 fantasy points in literally a 2-minute stretch. It's insane. So I'm fine with it. 7,900 is a pretty good price. As Beantown also chimes in,
my biggest fear come to life is sneezing on stream. So
It sounded like you went for the mute button, but we just couldn't get there in time.
Yeah, I missed it. Couldn't get it in time.
Yeah, we heard the. I mean, it was a good try. Like you tried to break up the pass, you couldn't. They scored a touchdown, but it's all right. You tried.
It was either go full on the mute and then sneeze on the camera, or cover the mouth. So it was one of the two.
Yeah, well, we're happy you're still here. We're happy the camera's still intact. Especially me and Beantown. We're the only ones that actually care, because we're the only ones of the 33 people in here that actually said bless you. So
well, the 33 people there, since they didn't say bless you, they can hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
Agreed.
I'll take that as the bless you for the sneeze there. All right, talked about Wemby. We love him. Banchero has been very disappointing. You talked about Orlando paying at a slow pace. This is technically a pace-up spot now for Orlando, and this is the cheapest Paolo Banchero has been all season long.
Yeah, what's funny? I've kind of slowly come around on Banchero today. I feel like you and I both kind of dismissed him last night. More me, for sure. I probably just, dismissed him and we moved on. But, he was the clear-cut rookie of the year last year. He was a 20-point scorer. He's just off to a bad start, and this is a get-right spot at a really, really, really good price point. He opened the season at $9K. That's what DraftKings and everyone else thought of Paolo Banchero this year.
Yeah,
he got invited to play on Team USA. I know that was not your Currys and Durants and all them, but still got invited to play and played a key integral role for that team. It's just been a slow start. This is definitely a get-right spot. Perfectly fine getting to him, 7,300. The field is too. The field is getting to Banchero. He is.
It's because you see the name and you see the price and you're like, oh, well.
Yep.
I think that's where we're going to go. We're going to talk about this, though, for a second when we get to center, because I see 3 is liking Carter here, and you and I have, if you tuned in to the Better Sports Betting Show, we may not be there with you. I see through you. We might be a little down
on the other side of the fence there for sure.
Our guy Wendell Carter there here this evening. Isaiah Stewart priced up to $6,100. Obviously, that's a direct play there with Jalen Durant not playing last night. The algo's Durant might not play. Oscar Thompson jacked. Isaiah Stewart jacked. So, but if they're out, I don't mind getting to them. Obviously, if Jalen Durant is out again, we just go and play Marvin Bagley and hope that the rest of the team comes out of the locker room at halftime. And, maybe Bagley had 20 fantasy points at halftime. He finished with 23. I don't know what happened, but he was on the floor and did nothing for 12 minutes or whatever it was he played. So, less thrilled, but was still willing to play. Kelly Oubre in. John Collins got subbed back in the fourth quarter last night. I don't know. Maybe they thought he could grab 7 rebounds. Yeah. He had a double-double. Here's another one that played really well. Would have no problem playing Collins here if you want to. Again, understanding it is a pace down spot, but still like John Collins at 56. I've played some Kelly Olynyk on a small slate tonight. Again, this guy is someone that just comes sometimes, can come off the bench and pop 28 fantasy points, 27 minutes against the Clippers, 33 fantasy points in 26 minutes against Memphis last night. He's already giving you rebounds and assists no matter what he does offensively. And if the trot does drop like it did here, 5 of 6 and 5 of 7, you're going to see some nice fantasy production here. And then who's to say, maybe someone on Utah gets in foul trouble. Walker Kessler gets in foul trouble. Laurie gets in foul trouble. John Collins gets in foul trouble. Olynyk can play those spots. So I do like Olynyk as a tournament play here tonight.
And the caveat is he's backing up center, and Walker Kessler is dealing with an elbow injury. Now, he's probable, so it shouldn't be necessarily affecting him. But if he comes out and throws up a little baby hook or gets hit on the elbow and it impacts, then we're going to see a lot of Kelly O at center. If you're playing cash tonight, John Collins, another one that you just plug and play, I think. He is really safe, multi-position eligible, has been floor of 28.
A little bit more about it. This may not be a great Walker Kessler matchup because Wendell Carter does stretch the floor.
Correct, he does, and that's what Kelly O chases bigs out to he was guarding Kevin Durant in the Phoenix game. I was watching that game. Durant was guarding him. He was guarding some Kevin Durant. So I agree. I think Kelly O is a great tournament play. Even when he's not playing 16 minutes, he still gave us 20 fantasy points. That's not gonna be great because he's gonna be low owned at 5,100. But you could see a 26 or 27 minute Kelly O like we've seen twice this year. And if that's the case, we have 30 plus fantasy point upside.
Yeah, definitely liked him better when he was 45, 44, 48,
yeah.
and 51, yeah. But it's a 4-game slate. So,
Yep.
If he pops here. That's fine down in this range here. Mo Wagner, another guy that you've been playing a lot this season, just so it's like a punt play in tournaments. Minutes haven't been great, but another guy, like 14 minutes, 19 fantasy points, 22 minutes, 33 fantasy points. The potential's there for him here to pop off if he hits the shots.
Yeah, he's over a fantasy point per minute. And if Wendell Carter were to find himself in foul trouble, Mo Wagner's playing 30 minutes, right? So, or whatever, extended run. So I think Mo Wagner is fine. Definitely a MME type play. It's
1
not
of 20, 2 of 20, maybe.
If you're playing 100.
He doesn't make 3. If I'm making 3, he's not making 3.
He does not. So definitely an MME type play. Yuta Watanabe is also one of those guys. Like, he's in their rotation, and he's actually been good, and he spaces the floor well for them. Just another guy who spaces the floor for Phoenix. I would definitely be interested to see what his role would be if Booker comes back, because then we're just talking about just less minutes for everybody. Right. So I would like to see Booker out if I wanted to play Watanabe, but I get why IC3U Justin H gave him a shout earlier.
Sure. Anybody else in power forward?
No, Nick Nurse was just talking to the media, John. I'm not going to play the audio because I'm trying to listen to you, but he was talking about the integration of the new players. So it's something we got to watch out for.
All right. Well, if we get any updated news, we'll certainly check that again. They're at least a 7:00 game, so we'll get hopefully some additional information there for sure. Center spot. JoJo's on the slate, coming off 81. Do you find yourself paying all the way up for the Philadelphia 76ers center in this matchup? He went for 34, 9, and 8 a couple of games ago.
This feels similar to Luka yesterday a little bit to me. Like, obviously, if you can get to JoJo, it's a fantastic play because he has as high of a ceiling as anyone else. He has the highest ceiling on the slate. Let's just put it like that. Well, Devin Booker has 70 in a game, but Embiid's gone for 100 like 4 times in his DraftKings career. But like, the value doesn't feel great when you're playing JoJo at 11.5, especially when you're plugging McCollum and you want to play Clarkson and like that's the start of your build. I don't know if like Ingram played, the Pelicans value kind of wiped off the board. And if Burks plays, then and Duran plays, or Jalen Duran plays, then the Detroit value is wiped off the board. So it's not something I'm prioritizing right now. But wait and see. That's something that could change if we get Detroit value and if we get New Orleans value, and if Devin Booker's ruled out. But now they're 7 p.m. games, so we're probably not going to know any of these things. But that's kind of where I stand using JoJo right now.
Sure. I mentioned Nurkic here, 7K, 30 minutes last time out, 28 and 2 and 3 of the 4 games this season, going up against San Antonio, coming off of that double-double in that matchup. Jalen Duran's there, but we talked Valanciunas together without the Zion Williamson. Only 20 minutes, hasn't played a ton of minutes. Did play 29 on opening night, but we know he's a fantasy point per minute monster. Depending on how this rotation works out, and Beantown's asking J-Val here, we're getting some exposure tonight to him.
Dude, he's just a fantasy point per minute freak. It's never been a doubt. It's just been the ability to stay on the floor, right? And coaches keeping him on the floor. That's just problem A through Z.
Yep.
Got 99 problems, but fantasy point production ain't one for Jonas Valanciunas, honestly. So
when they give him 35 minutes, he goes for like 70 fantasy.
Dude, he is such a high ceiling. If you told me he was to get 29 minutes tonight in Memphis, he would be in every lineup I built, especially without Zion. He'd be in every lineup I built tonight. If you tell me 21 minutes, they're still ceiling. He went for 37 fantasy points, but it's far less. So I love Nurkic. I love your Nurkic shout. San Antonio bottom 5 in rebounding this year, and Nurkic obviously specializes in that with a double-double against them last time. But I love Valanciunas right there with him. Those are the two center plays that I've mostly gotten to.
No pressure to Chua. We've seen Jakob play more minutes lately, 28, 29 the last 2 games here. Only played 25 in that game against Philadelphia. Again, split with Achua in that one. If Achua's out here again, do we go any consideration for Poeltl?
Yeah, I mean, I think Poeltl, along with a lot of these centers, also, can find himself in some foul trouble from time to time, and now has to face Joel Embiid. So I'm fine with it in tournaments. There's a ceiling. It's just you got to be comfortable with Jakob Poeltl potentially playing 24 minutes. Will he get you 30 fantasy points because he's in foul trouble? That's the question you got to ask yourself.
Sure. Let's talk Wendell Carter now. Obviously, Justin, I see through you was mentioning him before, liking him in his build. Sometimes price points are just price points, right? If Wendell Carter fits your price point, you're likely to plug him in. The minutes have been fine, 30, 35, 26, 27, but he's just missing a lot of his shots. Rebounds have been good, so can't argue with that. Not many defensive stats going his way. He's been a safe 20 to 24 fantasy points in 4 games here, not paying off of his price, which is kind of the reason we've been less intrigued by him. I guess if he was to hit a couple more shots, the numbers would look a little bit better, but the volume hasn't been what we've expected over the last couple of years either.
0.8 fantasy points per minute is not bad, but it's not great. And I think ultimately it comes down to the guys around him are, I think, just producing at a higher level. The minutes are probably safer for Carter, but Valanciunas has an infinitely higher ceiling. He just showed you that last night, right? Even if in 20 plus minutes, Valanciunas goes for almost 40, where if anything goes wrong for Wendell Carter, where there's foul trouble and whatnot, I mean, he's already behind the 8 ball, especially with how he's shooting the ball. Now, I don't think he's going to shoot this poorly every game, but it just seems like with Franz taking a step offensively and Banchero being
all the guards are healthy in play.
All the guards are healthy. Cole Anthony's a shoot first guy. There's just less and less shots for Wendell Carter. I understand, Utah is a bad defensive team. We've harped on that the entire show, and it getting to Orlando does make a lot of sense. It's the second best total on the board. Orlando's moved into favorite territory despite being on the road, getting Utah to back-to-back. But, it's not even when you look at Wendell Carter, he's getting rostership too. Yeah. It's not even it's not leverage either, which I think maybe something you can typically talk me into. Okay, he's obviously not a 43% true shooter. He's a 60% true shooter for his career, but he's 20% owned, which is the same as Nurkic. It's obviously half Valanciunas, but it's more than Poeltl. Is it more than Zach Collins? It's more than Zach Collins, who I think has been better by a mile. So who's similar price point. So yeah, I'm fine with it, I guess, but I'm out on Wendell Carter until proven otherwise.
Sure. Couple of value plays here. Drew Eubanks is someone that we've talked a lot about this season. Hasn't cracked 20 minutes, not a high volume shooter, but rebounds, assists, blocks, give you a steal. 29, 25, 25 in the 4 games he's played. Again, though, pretty big price bump going from 3,700 up to 45. Willing to pay 45 here tonight?
I kind of feel better about the Larry Nance price and minutes only because we saw the 23 minutes last night. That was with Zion. Now there's potentially no Zion. Who knows if they elect to go Nance, especially if Duren plays. That's a massive front court in Detroit. So they could go Nance and Valanciunas in the front court to match the size. They have one of the 9 Zellers as their potential backup center behind Larry Nance. So I actually kind of prefer Eubanks. Ultimately, it might not matter because if Duren's rolled out, we just go back to the 4,400 Bagley, as you alluded to earlier. And you don't need to touch the Eubanks or Nance bandwagon at all because, I mean, the one thing we can guarantee is we saw 33 minutes out of Bagley in a starting position, right? I know he wasn't great in the second half, but
Bagley's given us at least 19 fantasy points in every game while playing 16, 13, 15, 24, and 33. Obviously, we would have liked more out of him in this game, considering he had the 20 fantasy points basically at half. But overall, it's been a high fantasy point per minute play. And again, we're waiting on that news for Jalen Duren here tonight. If he was to sit out, would certainly be willing to run back to Bagley, and so would the field. field will gladly take the $4,400 discount tonight at the center position. Anybody else for you at center this evening? We hit pretty much everybody at the position. So
yeah, I don't think there's anything else.
Let's go about building a lineup. This should be interesting here now that we have some of the news that has developed and the news we're waiting on. We're gonna have to make some calls, I think, when it comes to lineup construction.
Sure.
Guessing from the way we've gone, though, you're big on J-Val, and we're in on CJ McCollum here.
Yeah, I would say Clarkson too. Just eat that chalk, and then we can differentiate elsewhere because I think we have a pretty high ceiling, a pretty safe floor for all three of those guys. This is how, by the way, John, this is how I would probably start a lot of cash game builds too.
Sure.
This is probably the way I would go.
Agreed. McCollum, Clarkson. I threw Scotty Barnes in there. Valanciunas gives us $5,800 a player. Would you rather Franz or Banchero?
I was going to say, I think small forward's a better position overall. I think power forward kind of stinks. So Banchero kind of 7,300. I kind of like that.
Or Wemby at 79 for tournaments.
Wemby for tournaments makes sense because you can also pivot anywhere you want. Maybe use Wemby at the use Wemby here. That works.
Go down Jalen Suggs to 5K.
Yep.
We still haven't touched the value Pelicans guards.
Well, we just don't know.
Passer, right?
We just don't know. There's an unknown with all of that, right? Like
sure.
Burks could play, and then Sasser's probably dead, right? If Ingram plays and they start Nance, do we have faith that Hawkins plays 30 minutes, or do we think Dyson Daniels can? Because Dyson Daniels had been playing over Hawkins in those first couple games, right? So it's like, are we sure Hawkins is going to play? Mm-hmm. I think there's just a little bit too much unknown with that until we have more definitive word.
Okay. So where do we go? We have a forward and a util, $5,200 left remaining. Again, this slate, as we've talked about, doesn't have a ton of value. A couple of guys down here, Cedi Osman, someone we've considered playing at 35. Gary Hass was shout out. Sasser was a shout out to us for under 4K. Wagner. Anybody for you that you're like definitely willing to plug right now?
This is why no one's playing Maxey or Scotty Barnes.
Right.
Pretty much.
And I mean, I threw Barnes in here. We could obviously rearrange this.
I don't want to. Honestly, I don't want to. I'm just saying this is why, right? Because people are just settling in on Franz in the mid-tier or Banchero in the mid-tier, or like that's really the range.
What did I just do there? Oubre gives us 4,600 for a util, which would be a perfect Hawkins play.
It would. I mean, look, Hawkins is being unowned right now because ownership is telling us that Brandon Ingram is in the game, right? Sure. If Brandon Ingram doesn't play, Hawkins is a plug and play in cash. He would be a fine tournament play as well. So, like, if you want to build under the assumption Hawkins is out or Ingram is out,
I guess you would say that you would have time to make pivots here. All right,
correct.
That game comes out, Hawkins in your util. You could pivot to Eubanks, could pivot to Sexton, or one of these plays. Maybe Durant gets ruled out, Bagley fits. Him being in your util gives you a lot of flexibility.
Correct. Yeah, and then it's a good point because Bagley is the clear, like, Ingram plays, Hawkins not starting anymore, Durant out, Bagley pivot, boom, done.
Right. So could be a lot of different directions to go. Again, there are having him in your util gives you a little flexibility. Again, Eubanks would probably be this, if worst case scenario, everybody's in. Burks plays, Durant plays, Ingram's in. You probably just play Eubanks at 45, right?
Yep.
And move there. So sample lineup I built. I kind of like it. Obviously, I wish I could figure out a way to get Maxey somewhere in here. I would probably have to move off of Wembayama to make that happen. Probably could throw Oubre in the power forward spot, make it work. But little example lineup for the folks at home. Anything else here, James?
Nothing else. We're just kind of all that, and now we're just kind of waiting.
We got an hour till tip. We should know the I mean, we're not waiting anything on Toronto, Philadelphia, but we'll know their lineup hopefully in a half an hour. We'll be in the Discord up until roster lock if you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family. Again, this deal ends this week. Scan the QR code right there or go to fantasyalarm.com/lock. Use promo code LOCK at checkout. Get the All-Pro package for less than $16 a month for the annual subscription. If you go month to month with us, it's about $40 a month, so you're getting a tremendous savings. And it gives you access to everything we do on site, not just basketball, but NBA, NHL, NFL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, MLB, and it's a year subscription. Come back around, you'll get our fantasy football draft guide for free, our fantasy baseball draft guide for free, and you get access to our premium Discord where we're in there answering your lineup questions, start sits, you name it, we cover it. So again, scan the QR code or go to fantasyalarm.com/lock. And again, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to our channel. Get notifications whenever we go live. I've been on like 6 different shows today. Alarm Fantasy Football at 2.
One more.
We did the Better Sports Betting Show at 4. We just did the NBA DFS show here at 5. I'll be on the Thursday Night Football show tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern as well. So you never miss a show here at Fantasy Alarm if you hit that subscribe button. We appreciate all of you tuning in here today to support the show. For James and I, we will be back again tomorrow. We'll have the NBA DFS preview show in the morning. We'll be back live at 5 o'clock Eastern time to break down the Friday main slate. Good luck, everybody, tonight with your lineups. We will talk to you then.